What is up, you guys? I'm JustGreene, and today I have the 2022 Honda HR-V. And if you're in the market for a small commuter car that has the space of an SUV, is the 2022 Honda HR-V the one you should be looking at? That's what we'll find out. So the 2022 Honda HR-V comes in 4 different trim levels, starting at a base price of $21,870, and the model that we have here is the EX trim level, and that's just one trim below the top of the line EXL. Now, starting off in the front, this front fascia looks pretty familiar. We've seen this on the CR-V and some other recent Honda products. Needless to say, it's pretty simple and not as in your face as some other competitors that I've seen, but that's not a bad thing. I actually think it looks pretty stylish with some of these chrome elements with the black accents, and it's not too overstyled. I also think it contrasts well with this platinum pearl white paint that my tester has. Now, coming to the headlights, they are standard projector beam halogen headlights across all trim levels, so they're not LED on this model as expected. Coming down below that, we have our fog lights, which are available on every trim but the base LX, so keep that in mind. Also, our fog lights are backed up with some functional air vents to keep our engine cool. Then coming around to the side, our mirrors are going to be power adjusting. They are body colored with some black accenting around the frame. Up top, we have these silver roof rails, which is not available on the base LX. And I want to take a step back for a second to show you guys the side profile of this car. So I like the curvy, swoopy kind of styling with the body lines going across, which then flow nicely into the rear tail with the rear windows. Now coming over to the gas cap, this one is not a push button style, so you will have to dislodge it from the inside of the vehicle when you want to fill this thing up with gas. And this gas tank will hold 13.2 gallons of fuel, so you're definitely going to be saving some money at the gas pump when you go for a smaller vehicle like this. Now coming down to the wheels, I think these look really stylish and it matches nicely with the sporty exterior of this vehicle, and these wheels are 17-inch machine finish alloys with gloss shark gray inserts, at least that's what Honda calls them, and every HR-V comes standard with these 17-inchers except the sport model, which gives you an 18-inch wheel. Taking a look at the rear, it's pretty much just typical Honda design language that we've seen in almost the last decade with their funky taillight design, but it still looks pretty modern at the same time. Now, if you didn't know, Honda is actually doing a complete redesign of this vehicle for the 2023 model year, so you might also want to look out for that. But if you're fine with the way this thing looks, awesome, let's continue. So coming to the rear window, you can see our windshield wiper is exposed, which is expected. Moving down to our taillights, I believe they are incandescent or halogen across all trim levels. They are not LED, however the brake light is going to be LED across all the models. Over here, of course, we have our HR-V badge. In the center, we have this chrome trim that goes across the tailgate, and then finally coming down, we have this matte black bumper, and below that, we have just one exhaust pipe on the right side of the vehicle. Now let's take a look at the trunk space of this 2022 HR-V. So to open the tailgate, just locate the button under the Honda emblem, and as you can see, this is not a powerlifting tailgate. I believe you don't get that feature on this vehicle. As you can see, this is where you get access to your spare tire, and you also have some other storage compartments for other small tools and whatnot. As far as the cargo room back here, it may vary slightly depending on which configuration you get this vehicle in, but with the seats up, we get roughly about 23.7 cubic feet of space, and with the rear seats down, that expands to roughly about 56.5 cubic feet of space. And this completely blows away something like the Toyota CHR, which can only expand up to 37 cubic feet with the rear seats folded. So overall, this is definitely one of the roomiest cargo spaces you'll find in the segment. Now let's take a look at what's powering our 2022 Honda HR-V. So what we'll find under the hood is a 1.8 liter inline-4, which makes 141 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to a CVT transmission, and the curb weight of this vehicle ranges in approximately 3,000 pounds. You can see that it uses a cheaper prop rod for the hood, but for the price you're paying for this vehicle, I think that's totally fine. As for the 0 to 60 time, unfortunately I couldn't find any information on that, but if I had to guess, I'd say it'd probably do 0 to 60 in the 10 to 11 second range, and it might also be wise to look at last year's model since this is pretty much the same exact car with the same powertrain, but based on my guess alone, this is obviously not going to be a very fast car from 0 to 60, so it's basically a win some, lose some kind of situation where you have to choose between performance and fuel economy. Now if we're comparing this to its rivals, it actually gets a little bit better fuel economy than something like the Toyota CHR. It's less than the Kia Seltos and Nissan Kicks, So this is pretty much in the lower to middle of the pack of this segment as far as fuel economy goes. So to enter the 2022 Honda HR-V, we can obviously just use the key fob or walk up to the vehicle and press the button on the door handle to lock and unlock it. Now coming over to the door panel, we do have some cloth on this wall right here. Down here, this panel is finished in leather. We have some controls for our power mirrors and auto up and down windows for the driver and passenger. Then we've also obviously got some storage compartments, and then coming down to the speaker grill, it's got the silver outlining around it, and this is part of our 180 watt audio system with a total of 6 speakers. But if you go for the lower trim LX or Sport models, we only get a 4 speaker system, so just keep that in mind. Now as far as our driver and passenger seats, no power seats are available on this vehicle, so they're only going to be manually adjustable, and these are also heated seats if you go for the EX or EXL trim levels. Now as far as the interior, you can obviously see it's very basic. The seats are made out of cloth and they're in this dark gray, almost black color, and I believe this is the only color that the interior comes in. So now we'll get inside the vehicle and we'll shut the door. And I think it sounds pretty solid when you shut it. That overall gives a great first impression of quality. Now starting up here, of course we have our hard touch plastic dashboard. Of course up here we have our interior lighting as well as our detachable sun visors on each side. Then coming down to the steering wheel, we've got our media controls on each side for our infotainment. As for the feel of it, it has an adequate amount of thickness to it. And I have pretty big hands by the way, so keep that in mind. The steering wheel is also manually adjustable. As far as our gauge cluster, we have an analog speedometer in the middle and 2 LCD screens on each side, and I believe they're customizable for whatever useful information you want to keep there. Now coming over to our infotainment, it's a 7-inch touchscreen with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay built in. Keep in mind that if you go for the very base model, this will only be a 5-inch screen. Now as for the user interface, it's Honda's familiar BlueLink system, which is also compatible with any Bluetooth device that you wish to connect. So if you're familiar with Honda's BlueLink system, this should also be pretty familiar. Then coming down, as you can see, our HVAC controls are all touch based, which I find to be a little bit unresponsive at times. There's also like this sort of delay with each button that you press, which is kind of annoying, so I think Honda should definitely work on that. And this is all piano black, which is notorious for getting dirty easily, so just keep that in mind. Then coming down to our gearbox, we have a traditional shifter here, which some of you may actually prefer this over the electronic ones in newer vehicles, but we are going to have an electronic parking brake as you can see here. Now if we put this into reverse, you can see that we do have a backup camera with active trajectory, and down here at the bottom we have some different modes to choose from, so I think that's really nice. The resolution on this camera is pretty acceptable. It's not too pixelated or anything like that. Now coming over to the passenger side, we have this really massive air vent, which I think it's too much in your face for just one passenger alone. So if you don't like that, of course you can just block out one of them. And then below that, we have our glove box, which is not dampened by the way, so if you're a passenger and you decide to open this, if it lands on one of your knees, it could hurt a little bit, so just keep that in mind. Also, I apologize for the sunshine that's showing up on the camera. I'm in like a really sunny area right now. And then if we look under the gearbox, you can see there's an extra storage area with 2 USB ports and a cigarette lighter. I still don't know what the actual name of this is, and that's all very nice. There is no wireless phone charger down here, however, because that's not available on the HR-V. Here in the center, we have our armrest, which is nicely leather wrapped. We can also lift this up by pushing on the button under here, which if I'm being honest, it's pretty far back under this armrest cover, so keep that in mind. Now when you open this, you'll see there's not a lot of storage space in here because this is obviously a smaller vehicle, but also in the front of that, we do have some pretty nifty cup holders which kind of eat up into that center armrest storage space. And I'm kind of disappointed because these feel really cheap and flimsy. I feel like I could easily snap one of these off and break it. So Honda could definitely work on this. Hopefully they've improved it with the new redesign next year, and I will of course be sure to review that. Now to get into our back row of the Honda HR-V, you might be wondering, well, where's the door handle? Well, actually, if you come up here, you can see there's actually a cutout in this black window pillar, and that's going to be our door handle. So we can just pull on that to open it. And now taking a look at our door panel here, we're going to have pretty much the same materials that we had in the front. So there's really no cost cutting here, which is really nice. Both the front and back doors look very identical, except for, of course, no one-touch automatic windows back here. Now let's bring our attention to the back row. So I'll just fold these up real quick. These are a 60-40 split. It's made out of the same cloth material that we saw in the front row. And then when I take a seat back here, you can see that I'm pretty comfortable. My legs aren't touching the seat in front of me, although they're pretty close, and the seats are pretty comfortable, although not the most plush you'll find, because again, this is obviously meant to be a budget economy car, so you're not going to expect it to feel like an Acura. Now I'm happy to mention that this vehicle does have a sunroof, or a moonroof, at least that's what Honda calls it. But keep in mind, the moonroof is only available if you go for the EX or EXL trim levels. And now coming down here, we only have one cigarette lighter and a really tiny storage area here. I kinda wish this was a little bit bigger. I'm not sure why Honda made it so small considering the amount of space around it. Then below that, we do have a hump in the middle, which is actually not too tall, so you won't have to split your legs too much if you decide to sit here. Also, there is no folding armrest on this particular model, so you will have to make do with the tiny storage cubby that Honda gives you on the ground if you wanted to use that as a cup holder. You can also get this interior finished in leather if you go for the top of the line EXL trim level, whereas every other model will just get these standard cloth seats. Alright, so we've reached the end of this review, and I definitely hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did find it helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. It would definitely help me out. Consider leaving me a thumbs up. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.